Hi there, this is just a very short quick video to review the book Endurance, which I finished yesterday, and what an adventure it is. I don't usually read stories recounting true adventures, stuff that actually happened in the world. This one was set in the middle of World War I, when an expedition was made to explore Antarctica to try to reach the South Pole. This book was written by Sir Arthur Worsley, or Worsley, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And the book is mostly not just a writing of the adventure that he had with Sir Ernest Shackleton, but it's more a biography of him, because Sir Ernest Shackleton was very modest. He never tooted his own horn. He never tried to speak high praise of himself. He always put the people that he was with, the men that were exploring with him into the South Pole, he always put their lives first before his own, and made sure that if there were any additional sufferings to be had by carrying extra weight, or if he was ever suffering, he would never make it announced. He would always make sure that he was the one carrying that extra weight and never put it on his men. And he always put them before his own. His dream was always to reach the South Pole, and he was one of the first explorers ever in the world to reach within 100 miles of the South Pole, although he unfortunately wasn't the first one to make it. Still, an incredible adventure that he had in describing his own journey to Sir Arthur Worsley, who then wrote it into this book, Endurance. But then the main story of the book is the expedition that Sir Arthur Worsley had with Sir Ernest Shackleton. So what can I say about this book? Well, first of all, it's describing Antarctica, which I went into assuming there wouldn't be many adjectives that could be used to describe what I presume to be a cold, barren wasteland that doesn't have any possibility to allow life to survive. There are a few penguins, there are a few walruses, I think, a few seals. Maybe walruses early in the north, maybe just seals in the south, I'm not sure. But as you can imagine, there's not a lot of life form there. No plant life. Yeah, there's no vegetation. It's cold, it's really cold. It's so cold that I don't think I've ever read anywhere any descriptions of life in such harsh conditions. And that is what they were exposed to as they tried to make their expedition and exploring Antarctica. They did a lot of the mapping in around 100 years ago for the world maps by detailing the coastline of Antarctica, and also just understanding, and by exploring, learning with each expedition that they make better attempts for the future attempts to explore and reach the South Pole. I don't want to describe the whole story here, but to me one of the highlighting moments is after spending so long in the cold, and after being stuck there, and ship, who knows, well, a little bit of a spoiler, their ship called the Expedition, sorry, the Endurance, the book called, the book is Endurance, the ship is called Endurance. When the Endurance ship got stuck between ice, and they had to get out from there, they had to walk hundreds and hundreds of miles across to get to the sea, and then they had to get one of the boats on the sea to an island called South Georgia, and there they would finally be able to contact other humans for the first time in years after being stuck. To me, the moment which was most satisfying is to hear them describe getting into a hot bath for the first time in years after being exposed to the cold for so long. That feeling of being in a hot bath made it all seem worth it, which obviously you don't want to put yourself through years of misery, but to try to imagine the elation of feeling that warm water was incredible. It reminds me of a scene from a movie. I can't remember what the movie's called, but there was a scene where they had been exploring the desert. Well, they were stuck in the desert, and they were going for hundreds and hundreds of miles in the desert, scorching hot sun, and some, I think, parts of the party had died as well, and the only liquid that they could get was from killing snakes and drinking the snake's blood. That's how little liquid they had left. They had to drink animals' blood for hydration. And then there was this one scene where they finally look over the hill and they realise something. And then the next scene is just them lying in the water with the water rushing around them. And after watching the movie and seeing them in that heat and that dryness and so thirsty for so long, to see that scene where they're in the water finally, with the water rushing around them, it brings such an immense sense of relief. And I'm not even participating in this cold expedition or going into the sun. I just feel it anyway. And so that was a really interesting thing about this book, is despite all the hardness that they had to endure, they finally, it's a good story because there's a happy ending really. They managed to escape. There was also a tough part at the end of the book, but I don't want to spoil it because, look, if you're watching this video, you're probably considering reading the book. I'd recommend it. It's a really fun adventure. It doesn't take too long to read the book, and it's really well written. It's got very well-sized chapters, I would say. It's about 16 chapters, and I'm a bit of a slow reader myself, so each chapter took me about maybe half an hour, maybe a bit longer to read. So they're in nice little bite-sized chunks, so if you only want to do a little bit every day, it's good. And there is definitely a long sense of, ooh, will they make it out? Will they make it out? And the book does reward you with seeing them actually succeed. So that's always very satisfying to get in a book as well. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this book. I would highly recommend it for anyone who wants to read about it. And also, if you're just someone who has a very, I don't want to sound presumptuous, but if you have an easy time saying how difficult your life is, you should read this book, because then you can really understand what difficult is. And then by contrast, you'll realize that we don't really have anything to complain about because we're not going through any sort of horrible conditions that these people had to go through. Of course, I don't want to presume to know your situation. You may have very legitimate reasons to be disappointed, but I'd say for the average person in this day and age, we're not going through that sort of trouble. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to say about the book. Highly recommend it. 8.4 out of 10. Thank you for watching.